Mother-in-law tried to move in permanently. I had the perfect escape plan. I should have known, right from the moment that phone call came through, that my world was about to flip upside down. But no, I was too naive, too hopeful that somehow, this time it would be different. The voice on the other end was sweet, too sweet for my own good, but I knew who it was even before I heard the words. Hey sweetheart, it's your mother-in-law. I was wondering if you could help me out with a little favor. Help. Yeah, right. When it's her, help is code for you're going to do all the heavy lifting while I sit back and judge everything you're doing wrong. I love David. God knows I do. But his mother, let's just say she's a piece of work. The woman has a way of making everything about her. It's a talent, really. It's just that she doesn't know the first thing about boundaries. Hi, Karen, I said, forcing a smile, though I'm sure she couldn't hear it over the phone. What do you need? She launched into the long list of needs that had been building up for weeks. It was like she had no filter for her requests, as though I didn't have a full-time job and a house to run on my own. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came right at the end. I was thinking of coming over for a few weeks, just to help with, the house and stuff. It's been such a long time since I've seen you two, and David's been so busy with work, and you've been so busy with the kids, and I thought it might be nice if I just stayed for a bit. A bit? My brain instantly did the math. A few weeks meant longer than that. She wasn't planning on helping, she was planning on moving in, permanently. I tried not to let my shock show. Oh, that's generous of you, Karen, but I think we're good here. My voice was tight, but I didn't know what else to say. She wouldn't take it well. She never did. Well, darling, she sighed dramatically. I just thought you might need a little assistance. You know how I am about helping out. I can't just sit by and do nothing. I knew the drill by heart. First, the sweet tone, then the guilt trip. If I refused her now, I'd be the bad daughter-in-law. David would feel caught in the middle, and I'd end up feeling like the villain. Every single time. I'm sure we'll be fine, really, I said, doing my best to keep it casual. David and I have got everything under control. Oh, darling, I don't want to make it awkward, but I really do think this is what you need. You're just so busy, and I'm sure David would love it. Don't worry, I'll be easy to live with. I'll just take care of everything. You won't even notice I'm there. My skin crawled. I could already hear the dishes rattling in the kitchen, her voice echoing through the hallways, her perfume lingering like an unwanted cloud. I could almost feel her sitting in my favorite spot on the couch, flipping through my magazines, commenting on the state of my home like it was a crime scene. This was the part where I realized there was no backing out. She'd guilt-trip me into agreeing. Or worse, David would side with her, thinking I was being unreasonable. It wasn't even about his mom. It was about how easily he let her bulldoze everything in her path. I took a deep breath. I'll talk to David about it. We'll figure it out, I said, voice a little too stiff for my liking. She was quiet for a second. Then the words I was dreading came out, slow and deliberate. Don't you worry about that. I'll just make myself at home. It's going to be so nice, Karen. I winced at the mention of my name, Karen. She had a way of saying it that sounded almost condescending, like she was above me, like I was the kid who needed her guidance. After we hung up, I sat there in silence, staring at the phone in my hand. I have to fix this. Fast. David had no idea what was coming. He'd been working late for weeks, and I had gotten used to managing everything on my own. The last thing I wanted was to have his mother walking through our front door, acting like she had any say in how we ran our lives. But as much as I hated to admit it, I knew he'd be torn. She was his mother, and he was raised to respect her no matter what. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to ignore the pit in my stomach, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to be completely invaded by her, of all people. That night, David came home late, as usual. I barely looked up from my phone when he walked in, but I knew he could tell something was off. He always did. Hey babe, you okay? His voice was soft, genuine. He always sounded concerned, but the problem was, he didn't always hear what I was trying to say. I'm fine, I said, just a little too quickly. Just a lot on my mind. He dropped his bag by the door and came over to kiss my forehead. What's going on? You're usually more chatty after a long day. You're gonna hate this, I muttered, trying to find the right words. What? I didn't even wait for him to sit down. Karen called today. She wants to move in with us. Like, for good. His face froze, and I knew he was processing it, trying to figure out if I was being dramatic or if I was serious. Wait, what? She wants to stay here? I nodded, biting my lip. Yeah, she thinks we need help. But honestly, David, I don't think we do. He ran a hand through his hair, looking overwhelmed. She's not great at understanding boundaries, is she? I scoffed. Not even a little, he sighed. I'll talk to her. We'll figure it out. But don't be mad, okay? She just wants to be helpful. That's when it hit me. We were about to go. From living our peaceful private life to hosting a non-stop guest who thought she had a right to dictate everything. And I couldn't just let that happen. David, I have a plan, I said, eyes narrowing as I started to hatch my perfect escape. I could see the wheels turning in David's head. He was processing it all, but I knew deep down he didn't understand just how suffocating his mother's presence could be. To him, Karen was just his well-meaning mom, the one who'd always been there, offering unsolicited advice and hovering over him like a constant shadow. But to me, she was a ticking time bomb, ready to go off the moment she set foot in our home. David's eyebrows furrowed as he sat next to me on the couch, still looking like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of plan are we talking about here? Because honestly, I don't want to upset her. You know how she is? I sighed, rubbing my temples. David, she's not coming in here. Not permanently. I love you, but she's not gonna dictate the way we live our lives. She already makes enough decisions for the two of us without even asking. So, we're going to have to be clever about this. Clever? He asked, almost laughing nervously. Like what? Lock the doors and pretend we're on vacation? I wish it was that easy. empathy, I said, almost bitterly. But no, we have to handle this with care. I'm not throwing her out, but I'm also not letting her set up camp in our living room for the next who knows how long. David stared at me for a moment, and I could tell he was trying to gauge how serious I was. He knew me well enough to understand that when I said I had a plan, I didn't mean some half-baked idea. Okay, I'm listening, he said, finally leaning back in the couch, his arms crossed. Step 1, I began, feeling a little surge of excitement at how good this was going to work. We make it seem like we want her here, but I held up a finger for emphasis. We keep it short, maybe 2 or 3 days, tops. And then we start dropping hints that we're getting a little overwhelmed by the whole thing. David raised an eyebrow. I don't know, Karen. She's not exactly the type to take hints. I smirked. Oh, trust me, she'll take them. She's not blind. The key is to make her feel like she's needed, but then make her feel like a burden just as quickly. David looked doubtful, but his curiosity was piqued. All right, and what's step 2? Step 2, I said, pausing to let it sink in, is to exploit the one thing Karen can't resist, her guilt. You know how she is with that. If I make her feel guilty enough, she'll start looking for a way to leave without me having to directly tell her she's overstayed her welcome. David nodded slowly, catching on. So we let her think it's her idea to leave, but in a way that still makes her feel like she did her part? Exactly. I grinned, feeling a little more confident with every word. We make her the hero for helping out, but also the martyr who can't bear to put us through too much. Once she feels like she's sacrificed enough for us, she'll want to leave, with dignity. David exhaled deeply, clearly torn between his loyalty to his mom and his frustration with the situation. This is going to be tricky, you know. She's not going to make it easy. I nodded. I know, but I don't want her here permanently, David. You know how this is going to end up if we don't do something. I'll be miserable, and so will you. And then, guess what? She'll be the one sitting pretty, acting like she's done us all a favor. David rubbed his forehead, his frustration becoming more apparent. I don't want to fight about this, but I also don't want you to be unhappy. You've already made it clear how you feel, and I don't want to ignore that. I took a deep breath, calming myself. This isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about setting boundaries, David. Something we both need to do. Because honestly, if she moves in here permanently, it'll ruin everything. Our space, our time, our everything. All right, he muttered. You're right. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, but I get it. I do. Let's try your plan. But you promise me, we'll figure out a way to get through this together. Of course, I said, offering him a small smile. Together, you just have to trust me on this one. I know how to handle Karen. The next morning, the sun barely peeking through the blinds, we were standing in the kitchen, pretending like nothing had changed. Karen had already sent a few texts saying she was on her way, and David was as stiff as a board. I could tell he was dreading the inevitable confrontation, but he knew it had to happen. When the doorbell rang, my heart jumped into my throat. Here we go, I muttered under my breath. David gave me a look, as though asking for reassurance, and I just nodded. It's fine, we've got this. And just like that, there she was, standing at the front door with her suitcase, wearing that all too familiar look of triumph. I hope I'm not disturbing anything, Karen said sweetly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Oh, no, not at all, I said, plastering a smile on my face. We're so glad you could come. David's expression was a mixture of guilt and concern, but he quickly hid it as he greeted his mother. Yeah, Mom, welcome. It's good to have you here. She looked around, her eyes scanning every corner of the living room as if she were evaluating it for, I don't know, improvement. It was like a wave of judgment rolled over the room, but I kept my cool. So, she said after a pause, dropping her suitcase by the door, I thought I'd start by getting the kitchen in order. I've always been a sucker for making a good first impression. I shot David a look, and he gave me a silent, resigned nod. Step 1 had begun. The plan was already in motion, but little did she know Karen was about to meet her match.